What I'm doing here is I'm just poking little holes with this little screwdriver right where the drill bit needs to sit. That way when I go to drill these, it'll already be ready to go. Got my old trusty bits here. These used to be my grandpa's. Just one to use. When I drill these holes, I drill right to the top of this. And that's how much lead I put in each one. That's how I know to keep them basically weighted just about the same. And I will use this guy for the eye sometimes, but I have some different eyes I'm going to put on this that are going to be bigger. So we're going to this and this guy here and move on to the next step here. In this jig I made, if you can see in there, it's got a couple pieces that are rounded that actually hold the bait. This one's actually designed for my trouts. It's designed for my trout baits to sit in there perfectly and not move when I drill the bottoms of them. But it also holds these guys perfect because of the heads are the same. So you just scoot that guy all the way forward, make sure it's flat. And when I go to drill it, easy. Put on the bigger one. Next step is to go around. Just use some 120 grit sandpaper and hit the edges. I adjusted the bit so it doesn't leave that little line there. Adjusted it just ever so slightly. But this will take that line off. So the edges on this guy are nice and sharp from the cut. Let's come back with some sandpaper here. Smooth down the edges. Don't take too much to do it. Got this guy all sanded up. Got my trusty old file here. This file is the exact same width as the tails that I put in my baits. So what I do is I come back with the file and then just hit it with the file. And a little cut down in there. If it's not quite even, it'll get that all nice and flat down inside of that cut there. Alright, next step on this guy is to come back here and mark the centers on this. So I'll just go off a 7. And I usually come a 1/4 inch down. Just move that up, come off a 9, 1/4 inch down. Bam, bam. Come back with this. Just get a pilot hole started. Make sure you keep it centered. Sometimes you'll get the wood grain, and the wood grain will make it tough to center that. Get 2 nice little holes like that. And then do the same thing on this side. Alright, so we got those holes ready to go. That way when we seal this guy, we'll know exactly where those holes are. And the next step is to seal these. Different people seal their baits different ways. Some people will just dip them in like some kind of sealer. What I do is I take the 2-ton epoxy, because I need to fill these holes anyways. Just barely got a little bit of spots where it's not completely flat. And instead of doing the old like marling baits, the super glue and the baking soda, I used to do that. It chips out and it pops out, and it has taken a few paint jobs off of some really old baits that I made. So I do not do the baking soda and the super glue anymore. It is like really bad. So what I do is I just take that 2-ton epoxy, and I just 2-ton epoxy over this, and I coat the whole entire cedar bait with the epoxy. That way the whole thing is sealed. Alrighty, so we have the other one sitting aside over here drying. This one's completely dried, and I got the line ties in this guy. It's a little smoother. There's no holes in there. Everything's all nice and sealed. Now the next part will be to take this guy and paint it. Alrighty, out here in the bait room, got my airbrush ready to go. Got the bait ready to go. And I got some black opaque Createx that I'm going to use for the base. And we'll give a black background to the lines and the texture once I wrap it with this Doris fabric. And you can get the stuff at Joann Fabric store by the yard. That's how I was getting it. And I just cut little pieces of it, little squares. And you can wrap the bait. Do it with the alligator clips, and what that does is it just gives the texture on the bait. When you wrap it, you know, you get that texture going on. So, alright, we're going to get to painting this guy. I think what I'm going to do is just do a Bluegill paint job on it and go a little extra with it. So, let's get to it. Hang these guys right there. That way the paint don't get messed up. and then I'll hit them with the air dryer. Alrighty, so both these pieces are dried using the hair dryer. Next step here, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and wrap these guys with this Doris fabric. Get a nice tight pull on that guy. Take an alligator clip. Just basically go around. That tail piece I like to tuck in there so it'll get that. And just basically keep going around it, pulling it tight so it's tight all the way around, and then ready to paint. I always take a small one on the top, that way I can still spray around. One more clip down here. Try to keep that kind of out of the way. Sometimes when it's all wild like that, I'll just take a little small one, hold all that wild stuff out of the way, and when you go to paint, it's all nice and clean, clear, ready to go. That guy could be a little tighter on the tail there, so just take that clip and kind of push it, and it will tighten it all up. And there you go. I'll do the nose, the head, the same way, and we will get to painting this guy. Alrighty, so we got a little bit of that yellow, patsy yellow on the bottom, and then the white on the sides and on the top. And how I do that is I spray this stuff a certain way, and I learned this from watching Jen from Gill Plates. She's awesome. And you spray the white from the front. Any light colors you spray from the front, and it will catch up underneath that netting a little bit. And then when you come back and you spray other colors, that white line will stay there, and it'll give a 3D effect to your little spots here, and it'll make it look like scaling, kind of, and it will make it pop. This one kind of has it, but I didn't really do it that much. I have another couple baits that I have it on, but this is the only one I have out here right now to show you guys. It'll kind of be like that, but it'll be way more detailed. Little example of what I was saying with the scaling and how it looks like it's popping, depending on which way you spray. So I sprayed that pink up, so that pink's up on the top, and then I came back with the other color and I sprayed down with that moss green and the sepia, which gave it that effect of the scaling looking like it's popping there. So let's continue. So this next step is going to be putting on the yellow and the green on the side and then on the top. Now the way that I'm going to do this so I can keep those white lines up underneath that netting is spraying directly on this, straight at it. And we go at an angle this way, that way, that way, that way. You want to go direct at it with these colors on this step. So let's do the yellow and then the green, show you what that looks like. Alright, so I got the magenta, black magenta on the sides, around the eye, on the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with this illustration moss green and hit a little bit of moss green on top of this, and it'll give it a little bit of a different effect. And then I'm going to toss just a little tiny bit of this pearlized green on top of that, and it'll give it even more of a pop. See how that works out. Let's do that. Just a little tiny bit of this to give it a little shine. At that point, hit it with the blow dryer again to heat set all this paint. Actually, it looks like I need to do it a little bit more. It's still wet, so let me hit this with the heat gun one more time. Gotta check that, because if you peel this off before it's completely wet, you're gonna ruin the entire paint job. You could smudge it, you could smear it. You want that stuff to be really set, and when you peel off the Doris fabric, it's gonna want to stick to the bait a little bit, and you're gonna have to like pop it off, because the paint builds up like a layer and kind of makes it all bond together. So the best way to do it is to get it nice and dry before you pull it off. So we're going to do that in 1 second here. Alrighty, because there's so many layers of paint on this right now, it took a couple minutes for that to dry completely. So what we're going to do is we will pop all of these guys off, which is always fun. Pain in the butt to get these off. Always a fun part here is unwrapping and seeing what we got. That's the difference in putting a white base and a black base. If it was a black base or a white base, you'd see white where that black's at. But since I did the black base, you're going to have a little bit more of the webbing, as they say, with the color, so it will actually bring out more colors in the webbing. If you can see the difference there, that paint job and that paint job so far. You can totally see the difference in the white lines. I didn't do any white or anything on this one. Did it on that one. You can see the difference. A lot more texture, a lot more going on. Look at that top, looks pretty cool. That pearlized green comes out pretty badass. It almost looks like a gold. But yeah, it's still a little tiny bit wet. I need to hit that again. But anyways, there it is so far. Let's keep on going. Alright, so the next step here, I took this old, it was like a bag for doing laundry, like a laundry bag. You can use anything to get some kind of scaling pattern. And I'm going to wrap these guys and then throw some purples up on this guy. Alrighty, so we got this guy wrapped up with this other stuff, which will give it another texture over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to hit with the white so I can get a little bit texture on it. I'm going to hit it with the dark color back the other way, and then I'm going to hit the purple straight on. That way it'll give it texture. Pretty cool. Let's do that one. Coming in now with that purple pearlized. Got that purple on there, and I threw a little tiny bit of the pearl magenta on there also, just a little tiny bit. Get a little bit different look there. Pretty crazy looking. Hard to see with all that pearl is going on. We'll blend all that together. Make it look dope. Oh, it's killer. Alright, so we got this bait to this point, and here's one of the first original ones that I built a long time ago. Kind of got that gill plate on there with the blues. Gonna try to match that a little bit, not exactly, but kind of get the picture. Just gonna have some blues and some red up underneath that gill like that, a little fin, and we will do that. Got the stencil cut out. Stencil fits right on there. Bam. Same thing. Right there. And I got stencils also cut for the bars, so I can do bars on these. Actually, we'll go this way. So we'll do some bars on this, and we'll do the gill plates. We'll do the other side, and then we'll throw some other colors on here. Right, so we got that white on there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, put it back over there, and spray some blues and some sepia up on the gill plate here. cool. Got some sepia in here. And for this application, I moved it. And we get a little bit different depth on that. Got 8 squirts. Let's do the other side. So that color there is the old sepia, and if you're ever airbrushed with the Createx Wicked Color Sepia, it smells funky. It's probably one of the funkiest smelling paints that's out there. I said it a few times before in the videos, but it still smells funky. I'm going to come back and throw a little bit of orange on the bottom. I don't want to cover that up too much. I really like that webbing and all that. I usually would come back on the bottom and I'd just orange out the whole bottom like this. I think that's a little much on this one. I don't want to kill that webbing out. Looks kind of cool. So we'll see what we can do with that. I'm almost thinking I should have hit the orange on the bottom of this in the first place. You know, it'd already be there. That's alright. We'll make it look good. Alrighty, now I reached a point to where I'm kind of done with the airbrush, and I'm going to come back with a paintbrush and do some detailing on this thing. Decided to switch it up. I'm going to use this pearlized orange because it's a little thinner. I can spray it easier, and I'm just going to use this little stencil here and put it on the bottom and then paint it up. So we got this guy to this point, and now what we're doing is we came out in the backyard, got a little bit more light out here. I'm going to throw some black on here, some red, and some more blue up on that gill plate. Give it some more pop. Got some of this full color shift blue. Take some paintbrush. Kind of dot it on there like so. Just kind of hitting the other spots where the other blue kind of is already. It gives it just kind of some more texture, like another deeper layer, I guess say. The color shift up on there. Next step here is to take some of this black with my paintbrush. Do the gill plates here. And just come around here. A little bit. A little bit easier to do without holding the camera, but I'm holding the camera with my other hand right now. Feeling kind of shaky in my old age. I'll just come back and match that on the other side. And I like to do sometimes with these fins. So I'll come back and just darken up this line a little bit. Let that pop again, and then come down here on the bottom. Just give it a little tiny shadow line. Like so. Now, for one of the very last steps, which is to take some of this red here, just come in underneath this gill plate. Push that one up a little bit. Got all these ants cruising up and down here. They're eating all the extra fish flakes. Guess they wanted to be on camera. Anyways, I'm gonna get that red up in there like that, and then what I do is I take the back brush here, dip it in that red, come right over here, and that'd be it. Next thing to do is to sign this guy, put the eyeballs on it, and clear coat it. Number all my baits. Getting up there, 145. Pretty cool. Alright, so the next step is to put these eyes on the bait. They're just some little plastic domed eyes that go in like bears or dolls, and they come with like a stem on the back, and you just clip that stem off, and then they fit right in the eye socket. I'm going to use some Gorilla Glue super glue gel. The gel works best on the eyes, and we're going to do that. Take the clips like that, and take one little spot and I'll bend it like this, which will tighten it all. I think that makes any sense. It's all pretty tight. Now I can epoxy coat it. Got the epoxy mixed up. Now what I'll do is I'll take this guy, put a little bit on it first. Put it back here. Kind of hard to get that brush up in here, so I use this guy for it. Back. We start with the tail for some reason. I think it's my reasoning behind starting with the tail first is so I can let this dry first, and then I can poke the holes and put the actual rubber part in the tail while the head is drying. It's kind of like a process of steps. The next thing I'll do is just take this double-headed brush and finish epoxy coating it. Kind of hard to do holding the camera here, so. Alrighty, so we got the back here all epoxy coated, ready to go. I'll let this guy spin for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then I will take it and I will hang it, and then I will do the head next. Let it spin for a while, that way the epoxy coat doesn't drip down into one spot. If you were to hang it when it's wet, it'll all drip to one spot, so I let it spin for a little bit, let it cure for the most part, and then hang it for the rest. after it's to the point where it's like tacky. And then I will do the head, like I was saying, and attach the tail, attach the whole bait, and finish this guy up. Switched it out here. Now I got the head spinning, and the tail is in the house hanging and finishing its cure. This one will spin for a little bit. And then what I usually do is when I'm working on these, I work on a whole bunch of them at one time. I have a bunch of baits that are already to this process, and I got to connect them all. So in the middle of all this, I'm also building other baits. This bait itself, the video will go on, but in actuality it will be the next day, because I don't like to handle these at all. You'll get fingerprints on them if you handle them too soon. So before I connect this guy, it'll be a day, but on the video it'll just be next morning. Clear coat is all dried. Pop those guys out and put the connectors on this guy and get it all hooked together, ready to go. Stuff looks like glass. Pretty cool, man. Take some pliers, spin that guy out of there. Same on this guy in the back here. Pop that off. This guy out. Just gonna make 3 little marks here. I'm gonna drill it out. Drill 3 holes with a small drill bit. And then what I do is I come back on 2 of them and drill them out bigger on one side. And then that center one I drilled out bigger on this side. That way you can stick the toothpick through on one side. It won't go all the way through on the other side. And it will hold it all nice and tight in there. A little tight. Let's take the toothpick. Just shove it in there. Pliers, give it a twist and push all the way through. Make sure that's poking out on the other side there. Just pop them off, or use a razor blade. Snip that off. Score it a little bit with the razor blade. Pop that guy off. Smooth it down. Make sure you don't scrape the clear coat. Make sure it's nice and pushed in there still. When we come back on the other side, shove this guy off. Same thing. Score it. Pop it. Clean it up. Next one. Bam. Done this a few times. I have it on the tail, and I'll come back sometimes with like a Sharpie, and I'll hit black over the ends there of the toothpicks. Alright, so this next step, and basically the final step, or 2 steps, is to epoxy this side in. Once that's dried, and I'll attach it to that side, and it will all be finished. So I'll just take a little bit of that epoxy, get it in the hole, just spin it and get it down in there. Make sure that epoxy gets down in there, way down in there. Come back with the handmade line ties. I'll coat these all the way around, make sure it gets in those threads. Nice and gooped up. shove that in there. Take this toothpick, come back around and wipe that excess off. Take the pliers. Oops. Take those pliers and come back and shove that guy in there. Take that out of the way. Now the tricky part is to get both of these at just about the same point. I've done a lot of these and get them off, then the bait won't ride right. So you want that bottom of that loop to just barely be in the wood. You can kind of eyeball it. And what I'll do is I'll let that dry, I'll come back and I'll clean up the excess around that, and then I will attach this side and the bait will be finished. I'll throw some hooks on it and we'll give her a little test in the tank here. Here's the finished product. Ready to go. Did not put hooks on it yet. It's got my goldfish in here and I don't want my goldfish trying to get hooked on this thing. Anyways. I tried to swim it in here with my fishing pole and couldn't quite work. Well, there you have it, folks. Finished product. The Urban Bass Layers Kick Turn Gill. And these guys are for sale. We got a bunch of baits for sale on urbanbasslayers.com, all lowercase letters. You guys head on over there and I'm distracted. Head over there and check out what we got for sale. If you guys want to buy a couple of these off of us, these are cedar baits. And they catch fish, man. Anyways, our bass layers. Goldfish are hungry. I gotta feed these guys. Thank you guys for watching. Get out there and go fishing.